Well, that was Ian Duncan-Smith. We did ask for a government minister to talk to us about the Prime Minister's renegotiation plans, but we're told none was available. But worry not, we can speak instead to the Conservative MP Bernard Jenkin. He's the Vice President of the Eurosceptic Conservatives for Britain group, and he joins us from our Westminster studio. Welcome to the programme, Bernard Jenkin. Are you as upbeat and optimistic as Ian Duncan-Smith?
No. And it's ironic, really, because Ian and I were elected on the same day in 1992, and we both opposed the Maastricht Treaty. We both despair about the direction the European Union has taken. And while Ian is gamely supporting the Prime Minister's negotiation in its own terms, I think he knows in his heart that this is a very lame renegotiation compared to what the Prime Minister was originally promising. I mean, there are a whole range of things that the Prime Minister wanted, like getting out of all the home affairs and justice provisions of the Lisbon Treaty, like getting a complete opt-out of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is, for example, gives the power to the European Court of Justice to decide prisoner voting, not just the European Court of Human Rights. And so it goes on. You
know Ian Duncan-Smith well, as you've just outlined. He's not known as a raging Europhile. And if he is optimistic and confident, certainly publicly, in the Prime Minister's chances of a meaningful deal over Europe, then why can't you be?
Well, because Ian is bound by collective responsibility as a member of the Cabinet. I am not. I am free to speak my mind. If you look carefully at what Ian said, it was very narrowly focused on, in a rather circular way, on his own, on the Prime Minister's own terms of reference. The European Union has changed so dramatically over the last 20 or 30 years. The question that British people are going to have to face: do they want to carry on with this journey? There's no status quo, by the way. Do they want to carry on with this journey of integration? Because what the Prime Minister is negotiating about will not change the course of the European Union or the course of the United Kingdom within the European Union. They are relatively trivial, rather complicated, but relatively trivial negotiating demands.
But he's going to get the deal by February, so he will have something...
he gets the deal by February. It won't change the price of fish. It won't allow the United Kingdom Parliament to determine our own laws. It won't restrict the European Court of Justice, which is another of the Prime Minister's demands that he's now dropped.
Right.
It won't restore the opt-out of the social chapter, which was gained by John Major in the Maastricht Treaty.
But
it won't achieve any of these things.
But Bernard, there were never going to be concessions, or enough concessions, that would satisfy you.
I'm glad you're saying that. I'm glad you're making the point that this renegotiation was never really going to address the fundamental problems.
Or you were never going to be satisfied by it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
Or you were never going to be satisfied by whatever the Prime Minister managed to secure.
The Prime Minister was making these much tougher demands. He has dropped these demands. I would be supporting the Prime Minister's negotiating position if he'd stuck to those demands.
Right, which one particular? I mean, if there was one thing that you would like to see him secure and bring back that you could sell to both yourself and your constituents, what would it be?
Well, the fundamental one is to restrict the ability of the European Court of Justice to rule on almost anything. I mean, I mentioned prisoner voting, which is now moved into that area. And the whole question of the relationship between those countries that don't want to be in political union, don't want to be in monetary union, don't want to be in the fiscal union treaty that's being redesigned by the core Eurozone states. The problem is, what we've got to face is, this is not a status quo we're voting to stay in. It's a continuing development of European Union integration.
Well,
and if you want to have choices, you have to vote leave.
Right. Well, and in that vein, I mean, it's reported that the Prime Minister will campaign for Brexit if his demands aren't met. You laugh. Would you welcome David Cameron leaving, or rather leading, I should say, the campaign for the outs?
We would very much welcome David Cameron joining the Vote Leave campaign. That's absolutely clear about that. But I don't think it's very likely. I think at the moment he's trying to convince people that he's being really tough. But we all know that this is what happens in all EU negotiations. The government pretends to be very tough, it pretends to be a great showdown, and then in the end, hey presto, the rabbits come out of the hat and everything's absolutely marvellous, and it's game, set and match to the British.